good afternoon and welcome to Brad von Gillern, legislative candidate from District 4. Thank you, Brad, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today are AARP lead advocacy volunteers Susan DeCamp, Joyce Beck, and Tim Potter. We also have the privilege of having David Holmquist, AARP Nebraska's state president, joining us. Emily Wick is also joining today from our office to assist with some of the technical details for the program. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. Brad, we appreciate your taking the next 30 minutes of your time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in your district and across Nebraska. As a little background, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering and strengthening people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. As people live longer, healthier lives, we know we need to think differently about what it means to age. So with that, Brad, if you want to start us off by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign, thinking about 5 minutes or less would be great.
Sure.
And then once we complete that, we'll jump right into the questions. So with that, I'll throw it back to you.
All right, thank you. Well, yeah, I was reminded as you were giving your opening speech that you're talking about my people being in the 50-plus voter category. That's fortunate or unfortunate, but that's where I live today. So yeah, my background is I think it has been shared already, but I'll highlight that real quickly. I've been CEO of Leader Construction Company here in Omaha for the past 21 years. Been with the company for 32 years. So I've run a substantial business. I'm accustomed with handling a sizable budget and hiring people and all those kinds of things. So I approach things from potentially a little bit more strategic mindset than maybe a lot of folks do. I've got an engineering background, and so that kind of leads me in that direction also. I'm a big believer in return on investment, and in some of the questions that you threw out, we're going to talk about that a little bit here shortly about what I believe might be potential ROI on some of the ways that we can invest in some of the services and so on. But again, lifelong Nebraskan. My wife and I lived out of state for about 8 years. We moved back here in 1991 and raised our 4 children here. We now have 6 grandchildren, and one of whom is on the way in about 2 weeks. So we're excited about that. Probably more relevant to our discussion today, we have cared for aging family members. And so that's very relevant in some of the questions that have been proposed. When I was in high school, my grandmother moved in with us, and she lived with us until she passed some 15 years later. My wife and I cared for her mother for a number of years, and my wife's from a large family, and so that responsibility thankfully was shared amongst several of the siblings. But we know what it's like to deal with some of the challenges of aging parents, and everything from the question about should they still be driving to should they still be living alone to what services can we employ to help them stay independent, and then the tough decision about when we actually make the move and have them come with us. So a lot of the questions that I may have more questions than answers, and I hope that's okay, because I think a big part of this process is getting to know the people that are the experts in all of these areas. And I'm quickly learning I can't be an expert in every area. So one of the best things I can do is develop these kinds of relationships so that I can rely on the experts to help guide in some of the challenging conversations. But again, I've got some relevant life experiences, and I hope hope those will come to play in this conversation and will benefit the progress of what we're all trying to do together to care for aging individuals in our state.
Perfect. Thank you, Brad. And congratulations on your new grandbaby. I hope all goes well. And what an excitement when there's a new one on the way. So congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Yeah. So we provided you, as we've kind of talked about it, with a set of 3 issues containing 4 questions pertaining to the 50-plus in Nebraska. We're kind of looking to focus 5 minutes on each question just because of the time constraints. So our first question today comes on health, caregiving, and home and community-based services, and Susan DeCamp is going to take that. So I'll go ahead and give you the floor, Susan.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Hi, Brad. Nice to meet you. Good, thank you. Nice to meet you, and thank you for spending time with us today. So home and community-based services, also known as HCBS, provides an array of services designed to assist individuals with daily living activities. that promotes independence and support them to age in place and delay institutional care. A family caregiver is any family member, friend, or acquaintance who cares for another person that is unable to live independently. And oftentimes they provide that care without pay, which you're well aware of. It sounds like you have done in the past. So we appreciate that service. Telehealth services can be significant for older adults in rural areas, particularly, or underserved communities, while also providing support to family caregivers by reducing travel and wait times and reducing costs associated with in-person care. So we have two questions for you on that topic. The first question, what will you do to support the 240,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska through policies such as enhanced respite services, access to telehealth, caregiver education and training, and help with out-of-pocket expenses?
Mhm.
And the second question, what will you do to protect and or expand the home and community-based services program, particularly in the area of recruitment and retention of a sufficient workforce and adequate funding of the services that Nebraskans and their families rely on?
Yeah, and you wisely have those two questions linked together because it's impossible to unlink the two issues, at least in my mind. And again, having run a business and knowing other folks that are running different businesses, the workforce issue ties back to just about everything. We can develop all the programs we want in the world. If we can't find the people to implement them, we've got a serious challenge and a serious problem, which we're facing right now. And I know later on, we're going to talk a little bit more about workforce. So I won't spend a ton of time on that. Again, having been an unpaid family caregiver, I know it presents a challenge, and my wife and I and our family were blessed to be in a position where we could do that, and not every family is in that position. It's one of the challenges in my role and where I am right now is it's challenging to understand what the existing programs are and then really be able to respond to what the enhancements to those programs are. But what I can state is that I believe that we've got both a moral and a fiscal responsibility to do. There's a moral and a fiscal argument for providing this care and doing all that we can to support folks staying in their own homes. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer in return on investment, and doing what we can to support and provide the care in home obviously keeps people out of facilities for a longer period of time, and it enhances their quality of living, being able to stay in their own home in so many ways, and it also saves dramatically on the expenses. Enhanced respite services, forgive me, I'm not terribly aware of any respite services that are provided for in-home caregivers at this time. So anything that would be done there would be an additional program, I believe. Telehealth, I've actually we've utilized telehealth in a number of areas. I think it's an excellent response and again very cost-effective means to address health issues both with seniors and with people in all situations. I know later on we're going to talk about the need for high-speed internet, and again those two things tie in together very, very closely. Also, expanding the HCBS program and recruitment and retention of workforce, I've kind of spoken to already. Adequate funding. Again, I'm not exactly familiar with what the funding that's being provided right now, so not exactly sure what we can or should be doing to enhance that. But again, I do know. Back to my ROI comment, I do know that spending money in this area reaps a benefit that is less expensive than the alternative. So if we're presented with programs or opportunities or ways to support these things, then I would certainly be supportive of that.
Great. Thank you for your answer, Brad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And I do appreciate your sharing your personal story. And truly, sometimes people don't understand unless they've walked in the shoes of an unpaid family caregiver. So I think I do appreciate your sharing that and understanding that aspect, because again, not everyone has done that. So thank you for sharing that. Moving on to question number 2 is on nursing facility quality. So Joyce Beck is going to take that. So go ahead, Joyce.
Okay. Well, hello, Brad, and thank you
Hi,
so
Joyce.
much for giving your time.
Thank
Over
you.
20,000 Nebraskans require care in nursing facilities or assisted living communities. Facilities have closed their doors, citing reimbursement challenges and staffing shortages. Nebraska will need an additional 4,700 more nursing assistants, LPNs, and RNs by 2028 to meet Nebraska's care needs. Everyone, regardless of where they reside, deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and to have access to quality medical care. Better staff to resident ratios improve the overall quality of care and the well-being of residents. Workforce recruitment, retention, and job satisfaction challenges are prevalent across long-term care services and support industry. Causes of workforce challenges must be identified and implemented to respond to the growing need for high-quality care. So, Brad, my question for you is this. What will you do to improve the quality of nursing facility care for Nebraska residents, including addressing the growing long-term care workforce crisis in the state, professional education and training, and accountable facility reimbursement?
Yeah, so much of this question comes back to something I've alluded to already, and that is workforce issues and staffing issues. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of parallels in this conversation with the teachers shortages, and I've spoken with the NSEA here very recently, and we've had a similar conversation about how do we recruit people. How do we retain people? How do we entice people to come in from other places, or how do we entice them to get into the industry at all as young people? And I see a lot of parallels, and some of the things that were done for teachers in the past year or two. I see that some parallels here that we can apply to this industry also, whether that's loan forgiveness, whether that's reciprocity of licensure across states. And I know that there's been some legislation passed and some legislation proposed around that. I know that there's a strong presence of an immigrant workforce in so many of the care facilities, and some things that we can do. Much of that would apply more at the federal level than at the state level, but doing what we can to make sure that we have legal immigrant workers that are able to provide care for people in a way that is respectful and provides quality care for them. And then on the reimbursement, again, forgive me, I'm just not as familiar with the details on where reimbursement stands right now, but I know that as costs continue to rise and inflation impacts all of us, and one of the best ways that we're going to entice people to come into the industry is by paying them well. Again, another parallel with the teachers, the scenario with teachers in education. So certainly those costs are going to continue to rise, and the reimbursements need to rise accordingly. I know as with many things related, and those particularly related to government, the reimbursement tends to lag behind the cost increases. So we need to do what we can to stay more current along those lines. But again, I see a lot of parallels there. Some of the great things that are being talked about and done to preserve our educational systems, I think, can be applied across the board here too.
Okay, well, thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you, Brad. Our final question then for the discussion today centers around livable communities and helping people stay in their home. And Dave Holmquist is going to take that question to round us out here. So go ahead, Dave.
Thanks, Gina. Good afternoon, Brad. It's good to meet you.
Thank you.
A livable community is safe and secure, offers affordable housing and transportation options that allow individuals to travel by multiple means, and provides supportive community features and services for people of all ages, allowing people to remain in their communities as they age. Affordable and reliable healthcare and transit options are critical to support older Nebraskans and the concept of aging in place. High-speed internet should be affordable, reliable, and accessible for all Nebraskans. Digital skills development is also essential to obtaining the benefits of high-speed internet access in the home, digital skills is sometimes referred to as digital literacy. So my question for you is, what will you do to ensure all Nebraskans, mainly those 50 plus, have access to livable communities which offer affordable housing, diverse transportation options, adequate health care, and affordable, reliable, and accessible high-speed internet, including digital literacy development?
Yeah. So in my business experience, we have constructed healthcare facilities in some rather remote areas, and we've done that. Again, I've been in this role at this company for 31 years, and so I've seen some of the programs and some of the things that have allowed facilities to be built in, particularly in more rural areas, and that feels like mostly the direction of this question, not entirely, but part of where this direction of this question is going. Certainly in the Omaha and Lincoln metro areas, there are more options for livable communities than in outstate Nebraska. So, but again, in outstate, and we can't seem to uncouple any of these issues from one another. In outstate Nebraska, what we experienced is it's very difficult to build in those areas because of the lack of workforce, and then it's difficult to operate these facilities because of the workforce. So I think a lot of these questions continue to point the finger back at the workforce development challenges. We can build all the facilities we want, but if we can't staff them, it doesn't matter. And as you note in the information that you provided, many of them are closing because of staffing. They're not closing because they don't have facilities. So I kind of go back to the question or the comments that I made when Joyce asked her question, and that is really around workforce. How do we entice people to come into the workforce so that we can have these communities and provide those options? As far as transit, certainly, there's many options there. Regarding internet, that's probably the one that I'm the most familiar with and have had the most conversations. I've had numerous conversations with internet providers, and we've talked about the challenge of the last mile delivery of internet to primarily rural areas, and making sure that high speed is available to as many people as possible. I kind of see the internet, the broadband challenge in Nebraska, similar to what the rural electrification was in the early 20th century, and that is that electricity was seen as an option in the early 20th century, and then it really became a right of all homeowners and all citizens, and I believe that that's where we're going as a state. Certainly, there are programs that we can implement to help with digital literacy and help the elderly take advantage of all the things that are available to them there. So certainly some challenges. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think so many of them come back to workforce. How do we entice people to come into this industry and provide the care that we need, both in livable communities and in the home where we can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. We're coming to the end of our time here meeting together. So I would like to offer back to you final minutes to offer any closing thoughts or comments you have for our members and the constituents of your district. Any closing comments or thoughts that you have, feel free to give those now.
Yeah, thank you. Really, what I just want to reinforce something that I mentioned earlier, and that is that I don't pretend to be an expert in many areas, and this is one that I've got some personal experience in, but I don't have a lot of the hard data. And one of the challenges of being a candidate, not an incumbent, is you don't have a staff and you don't have a lot of the knowledge about existing programs and things that are out there right now. So the data, gleaning a lot of that data is a little bit more of a challenge. So I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm saying it as an invitation to continue the conversation so that I can learn more about how to do these things well. I think hopefully you've heard in my voice and in my personal story that I've got a passion for what it is that you're doing, caring for individuals and keeping them in their home, and certainly have an understanding of the challenges that presents for our citizens, and again, acknowledging the fact that not everyone has the luxury of doing what we were able to do for our families. So I need to have a broad view of that, and I'm sure there'll be many conversations in the future about how to do this well. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Brad, and we will take that invitation and run with it and be in touch as things progress. We would love to sit down with you and have more conversations. So thank you
Great.
again for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign. And again, thank you so much for meeting with AARP today. Take care.
Thanks for your time, everybody. It's nice to meet
Thanks,
you.
Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.